I'm Coco and I have ideas. In this video, we're going to be talking about the big bad boogeyman of declining birth rates. Oh no! Yeah, so I'm arguing here that one of the core issues, if not the core issue, fueling declining birth rates across industrialized nations is the conditionality of patriarchal love. The conditional and inconsistent presence and participation of men within their own household and their own relationships. Cool. No, but seriously, the conditionality there is why a substantial population of child-free by choice women do not want to procreate with a man. Not all child-free by choice women, there are other reasons not to, but a substantial population. It is the conditionality of patriarchal love that requires the unconditional love, unconditional labor, unconditional presence of women without any backup support if that man withdraws, right? That is the core issue for why a lot of women are like, no, that is an unreasonable risk and investment to take, even if theoretically I would love to have children, but only with a partner that was meeting me halfway, that was shouldering the responsibilities of household and family equally. And that's just not how men show up. So let's break it all down. So earlier this week, the Wall Street Journal, this week being October 17th, 2024, I don't know when you're watching this, but a Wall Street Journal article came out and it was evaluating how various European Union countries have put in place financial incentives to try to encourage women to have more children, to address their declining birth rates, right? And so various countries were doing various things. Some are offering subsidized minivans. Other countries offered substantial loans at below market rates, right? So like very cheap loans. You get, I think, up to $150,000 with a below market interest rate if you had children. Hungary was the most aggressive. Hungary has a policy where women who have 4 or more children receive a lifetime exemption from income tax, right? So the article was looking at all of those carrots that European nations were putting out, and they ultimately found that they haven't really moved the needle, right? What they found is that people who want to have children will have children regardless, and people who do not want to have children won't regardless, right? And I thought as an American that was really interesting to look at, right? Because in Europe, all European nations have much, much stronger social support systems than we do in America, right? Every European country, with the exception of Slovakia, but every other European nation has universal health care, where it is not pay to play like it is in America. Every citizen is entitled to access the government-run or quasi-public universal health care options. So they're already, and like, there are a lot of other policies that are more geared towards individual rights and quality of life protections in Europe. Like America, we don't got any of those. Insurance is pay to play. If you're poor, die in an alley. I don't love that about us. But the article is really interesting to me, especially considering that in America, we are all stick, no carrot, right? That's what all the abortion bans are about, right? Forcing women to force birth is the goal of abortion bans. And I don't know if you saw earlier this year in January 2024, Bloomberg put out an article that, a report that showed in red states, in the 2 years since Roe v. Wade was rescinded, over 65,000 women have been forced to give birth in red states with abortion bans when they were, forced to give birth, didn't choose to get pregnant, didn't choose to have that encounter. Get what I mean? 65,000. Even more now, 10 months later. So it's just interesting. We got different approaches to forcing women to have children, enticing or forcing, but none of it's actually looking at the real issue. That is the conditionality of patriarchal love. And just some quick facts. A replacement birth rate is, on average, a woman having 2.1 children. Assuming consistent immigration and mortality rates, that is what is required to replace your population, right? So in 2022, the EU average birth rate was 1.46 per woman, which is less than replacement. And in America, 2023 data shows that our fertility rate fell to 1.62 births per woman. Once again, below replacement. So we're not as far behind as Europe is. We're gonna get there. Anyway, so yeah. And one thing to really understand about birth rates is, outside of personal consideration, on a social level, birth rates are a very, very functional issue, right? All of our social systems here in America were designed assuming at least a replacement population, if not an always expanding population base, right? So like Social Security requires that there are more young people paying into it than older people cashing out of it, right? And like capitalism as a system requires an ever-growing population base to ensure, one, a high population, wide population of laborers, cheaper labor that way, and an ever-increasing population to sell things to, right? And, the tenet of capitalism, the theory, the logic, the engine of capitalism is indefinitely increasing profitability, that every quarter should be more profitable, more profitable, more profitable, right? And so you really do need a constantly expanding population for that to be feasible. And it's never feasible, it's always cancerous, but you absolutely need a expanding population base to have a chance of meeting that goal of cancerous constant growth of profitability. And so I say all of this because it's actually really important to understand that the state and major capital holders, like the movers and shakers of the economy, they have the most to lose with declining birth rates. It directly threatens their domination and unmitigated ability to continue functioning like pre-revolution French aristocrats. And we must not underestimate what they will do to preserve this cancerous way of life, right? In the same way, you shouldn't have underestimated what slave-owning plantation owners would do to maintain that lifestyle. The Civil War! Or as they like to call it, the War of Northern Aggression, where they tried to take away our slaves. So aggressive! Anyway, because from a non-elite perspective, right, and a non-racist perspective, why would declining birth rates be so scary? I mean, in America, we don't have enough affordable housing for the people that already exist, right? Millennials and Gen Z are facing worse financial outcomes over the course of lifetime than their parents' generation. So for the first time in American history, the children are having worse economic lifetime outcomes than their parents' generation. And that's the whole American promise, right? Broken. Because the American promise is every generation does better than the last. And baby boomers are the last to really receive that dream. So our current systems aren't capable of meeting human needs across the board as it is now. So from an average perspective, it's yeah, we shouldn't just be forcing more people into systems that already are busted and not working. But that's not the perspective of those empowered by the way things are currently run. And that's critical to remember. So, back to our original ideas here. Financial incentives alone, while it's cool that Europe does the carrots instead of the sticks like we're doing in America, but financial incentives alone are not enough to meaningfully address declining birth rates. Banning abortion isn't it either. The real solution is dismantling patriarchal entitlements to actually build healthy and equitable relationships and standards within families and specifically between men and women, right? So we live under patriarchy, and the average man is patriarchal in that he is functioning from a fantasy of innate superiority, innate masculine superiority over women and femininity. Just like born with it. The X factor. Right? And so like liberal men like theoretically believe in equality, and many identify as feminists, but that's all very theoretical. They still deeply struggle to actually practice equity and partnership. Most, even liberal men, still function and behave under patriarchal entitlement. That his time, his dreams, his efforts, his labor, they all matter more than a woman's. Always, always, always. And they really do fall back on that, even if like in theory they believe in equality. It is so easy when the actual challenges of prioritizing the well-being of family, of children, of your wife's needs, when it's not fun, when it's boring, when it requires sacrificing some of his passion time, some of his golfing time, well, then it becomes very not fun, and it is super easy to fall back onto the patriarchal entitlement and just shove off the responsibilities and labor onto the woman. It's so easy. And there are very few consequences for it outside of ruining his own relationship, but they usually don't realize till it's too late. Anyway, patriarchy is I always say this, patriarchy is the culture of male narcissism. And as a system, patriarchy is dedicated to preserving the male entitlement to own a woman as his private, for-profit means of production, right? And I mean that literally in terms of creating life through pregnancy, but also as the labor of life, the means of production of making him a life to consume. You know, the woman is by default seen as solely responsible for managing and executing all labor and knowledge related to meeting human needs, basic needs, child rearing, running a household, and just all labor coordination, organization, initiative that goes into creating a life worth living. That is the woman's responsibility, and the man comes to consume it, without meaningfully participating or compensating her for all of that work. So patriarchy was legitimately the first economic system, private for-profit ownership of women as the original means of production. Capitalism is just the material extension of patriarchy, right? So I talk about this all the time. I have a lot of articles up for free at my Substack detailing all of these big ideas. My Substack is powerculturecoco.substack.com. It's linked in the description. And then I also talk about it on TikTok if you're interested. And here, I'm uploading weekly videos, so like and subscribe if you're into this content. I really, really appreciate your support. All right, let's keep going on. So anyway, that's how patriarchy functions. Culture of male narcissism, system of male private for-profit ownership of women as the means of production for their life. Women do everything related to meeting basic needs, running a household, raising children. Man consumes it and then focuses on his own individual higher pleasures. Career, passion, hobbies, whatever. His presence and participation in the household is conditional. Yeah, not great. So yeah, declining birth rates really reflect women rejecting that formula of family under patriarchy, right? That a man is a conditional presence who prioritizes self first, and the woman is then required to be the unconditional presence, unconditional laborer, who must sacrifice self first. So like how does it make sense to bring children into that equation? I have to sacrifice first. You always prioritize self-enjoy first. Like, it's so uneven. It's so unyoked, right? Not equally yoked. And that's because patriarchal love is conditional love, right? Patriarchal love is a love that must be earned through unquestioned obedience and submission to a man's will and personality whims, right? Patriarchal love is a love that is scarce. Bell Hooks talks about this in The Will to Change. Eric Fromm talks about this in The Art of Loving. Excellent books to check out if you're interested. But patriarchal love is a love that is scarce, right? And its scarcity is what makes a father's love more valuable than the unconditional love of a mother, the unconditional presence of a mother, right? And so to maintain that higher value of conditional love, of patriarchal love, right? The unconditional love, unconditional labor, unconditional presence of the mother is required, right? Regardless, like, it's unconditional, regardless of whether the father is meeting his responsibilities towards the wife and mother. She can't abandon her work, but he can. That's not great, right? So under patriarchy, a man's responsibility to fulfill his commitments to provide, protect, and participate in loving relationships with his partner and children is optional. It's conditional. It's after you do you, bro. And then you roll through when it makes sense. Makes sense for you. When all your whims and desires are fulfilled, yeah, then you can step in and babysit your kids. So patriarchal love is not reliable, right? Patriarchal support is not reliable. And it's partially because patriarchy is all about empowering men and centering men at the cost of everyone else, right? Society isn't centered around children. Society is centered around male desire, male ego, male fantasies of superiority, right? And like a man's power is largely generated through the threat of his withdrawal of love, withdrawal of presence and resources. I am realizing now how weird I say withdrawal. I had speech impediments as a kid, so, honestly, I'm doing great. But patriarchy requires conditions for accessing care and resources, right? How else will men forcibly maintain dominance and control over every aspect of life without having to consistently meet standards of accountability and social contribution, right? How else will men force themselves to be centered socially as the authority and the supreme, most valued social presence without consistently meeting standards of responsibility for those who depend upon them? Patriarchy allows men to withdraw emotionally, withdraw their presence, withdraw resources, right? Within their own home at direct cost to women and children. And that's how he ensures that his immediate desires, his ego, that comes first. Women and children down the line. Your needs, you perform for me if you want to keep accessing my presence, my resources. It's not good, right? So despite all of the pro-life rhetoric, patriarchy really doesn't view children as like human beings. It doesn't, right? Children aren't like legitimate, full human beings with their own needs for support, dignity, unconditional love, resources. Like, that's not how patriarchy views children. In patriarchal worldviews, children are mostly an appendage to controlling women, and then also reflect, like, they're an extension of the man, his property. They reflect his status and his ego, right? So men, and like, they're also there to benefit men, right? It's like career-wise, men with children, they receive massive career benefits. There are a lot of studies that show that family men, career-wise, are perceived as more reliable, more trustworthy, more successful. They get higher performance reviews than unmarried men when you're controlling for all other factors. They're seen as more trustworthy. They're more likely to get promotions, especially economically. Because it's like, oh, you gotta take care of your kids. I get it. The same does not happen for mothers. Mothers receive a penalty, career-wise, reputation-wise. There are a lot of studies that show that. It's bleh. I'll link them down below. Anyway, where am I? I lost notes. Yeah. So patriarchy allows men to fundamentally view children as his property and as extensions of self and his status. And also to use children, the existence of children and the needs of children, to corrosively control the mother, to extort more and more from her. So ultimately, like, a lot of child-free women do not want to enter this dynamic, right? That requires them to be an unconditional presence, unconditional laborer, and be like just absolutely unconditional, the sole support to a conditional man. Because that puts women working on the clock, on duty with kids, 24/7, 168 hours a week of the 168 hours in the week. And then the man works 40 hours a week outside the house, and then, oh, that was so much, gotta prioritize my bro time, I gotta recharge, I gotta go golf for 14 hours, it's important for my career. And the women just, there's no support. And like, I would not want to enter into that, right? I would not want to enter into that. You're conditional, you consume my labor, there's no compensation for me, I get sick, I need help, you're very unreliable, right? Like, just peace. Women cannot leave the children. Men, there's like, me, you know? So that's a major reason for the declining birth rate, right? It really, really is. And like, it's a leap of faith, because you're asking, when you have children, you're asking women to enter into marriage and having babies and family on faith that he will show up, that man will be your equal and partner, that he will shoulder the burdens for you, with you, participate in the household with you, be emotionally present with his children with you, right? The hard work of parenting with you. And that's a big risk. That is an act of faith, right? And the problem is, a lot of men are entering these systems of faith, which is what a family is. It is a system of faith, right? Patriarchal men, they are entering a system of faith from a mentality of power, right? Like, you know, Robert Greene's The Laws of Power? One of the laws of power, right, is use absence to increase respect and honor, right? And so the whole thing about this, use absence to increase your respect and honor, is that once you're established, use absence and withdrawal to keep your brand value high. And like, yeah, that's a great that's a great idea when you're talking about your career. You're talking about being a famous person or showing up in the corporate, whatever. Totally. But men are applying that to their families. Once you're established, once you've entered into this marriage with a woman, once you've had a baby, like once you're established, right? That's when men are like, oh, okay, let me increase my bids for power here. Because, you know, the daily repetitive work of household work, of having children, of raising children, especially small children, a lot of it's boring, straight up boring. He doesn't want to do that. So he can withdraw, and that increases his own power. Then she's doing more to try and convince me to be in the household, right? But do you see what I'm saying? Women are expected to enter into family blind faith. And then men are entering it, establishing it, and then coming at it from a mentality of, how do I increase my power? How do I put this more under my dominion? Well, through absence, through erosion of the faith. And this is why birth rates are declining. Until men step up as individuals, go within and figure out how to evolve into people who are capable of real partnership with women, who don't feel that they always need to get more than they gave when a woman's involved, especially a woman he loves. Always need a higher return. They need to dismantle all of this shit within themselves. Because it doesn't make sense. Applying the laws of power to the system of faith that is family has broken the logic of procreation for so many women. Because it is too much. It is too much to be the sole laborer responsible for all household chores, all child rearing, all knowledge, to be the rock managing all of that. And maybe sometimes he'll babysit. Like, F you, dude. This is why birth rates are going down. There are so many women who would want to have a child or two with a man if he was capable of being an equal partner, if he wasn't so poisoned by patriarchy. So, yeah, mothers don't have the luxury of, being scarce to increase their power. His conditionality requires her unconditionality. Why would anyone choose to enter that dynamic? So I'm Coco. Please let me know what you think. Once again, I have more articles up at powerculturecoco.substack.com. I'm posting weekly videos here. So please like and subscribe. And yeah, for sure, let me know what you think in the comments. I love you, sweet baby angels, and I'll see you soon.